My name is Kera Marie, and this is the Ariadne Project. And today I am returning with Tania Tuck. Tania has over a decade of experience as an emotional wellness coach and as a certified DiMartini method facilitator. She's also trademarked her Spectrum of Wisdom process and is currently working on a book. Tania and I met at a conference and we recorded our first episode together, and she blew my mind. It was amazing. So I'm so delighted, Tania, to have you back on the Ariadne Project.
Well, thank you, Kera. It's delightful to be here and for us to do this together. I think we found some commonality, didn't we?
Yes, we did. In that first episode, we covered so much ground that here on the Ariadne Project, it's all about finding ways to overcome our minotaurs, the demons in our lives, and how to escape that emotional labyrinth. And you really broke it down in some interesting ways. You showed us in that first episode how important it is to actually name that minotaur for what it is, and that's how we're actually going to be able to overcome it. And that these things that we perceived as challenges in our lives, these walls of the labyrinth, we can actually deconstruct that, take those bricks and use them to pave our own life. That your message was amazing and brilliant and really very impactful to me. And so I'm really excited to have you back. After Tania and I recorded that first episode and we realized how much overlap we really did have in our interests, we decided to do a series for you guys. That one of Tania's big passions, she's got a background in teaching, is to really break down these complex subjects and to present them in a way that is both digestible, but also ways for us to integrate them. And this is where it overlaps with me as an empowerment artist, that I want to provide methods to empower the people that I create artwork for. And we both see a huge element of this as providing people with the actual tools, the concrete steps that they can take to actually make a difference in their lives, so we all can find that better life that we're seeking outside of the labyrinth. But this is all about finding perfection in our story. So that's why Tania is here. We decided that we needed to do a collaboration to really get into some of the specifics of these common stressors that we just have as a universal human experience. All of us do. And so Tania has been taking me through some of her coaching, and it's been really interesting for me to realize that a lot of the common stressors that are coming up for me, these are the very kinds of stressors that have come up for the hundreds of clients that Tania has worked through and across a global scale, that this is our common humanity here. And so what are these common stressors? There's things like shame and guilt and anxiety and fear. And so we decided to do a 6-part series to really get into the nitty-gritty of these things. And so today, Tania has come back to talk to us about stress itself. So Tania, a lot of us use this word. It's like, oh, I'm so stressed out. But what actually is stress? What is the cause of stress? Where is this coming from for us?
Okay, well, thank you, Kera. So let's start. You're right. We need to start with what stress is, because if we can't name, as I said, as we've discussed, if we can't name the thing that we're struggling with, we have difficulty sort of finding out how it's affecting us. So I describe stress as perceived challenges in your relationships, career, or health, and then that affects your identity. So you're not stressed out about something that doesn't personally affect you. These are things that actually make you question what's important to me, what are my values. And so what I'm suggesting here is that you're going to be feeling more challenged than support. And but we all need stress. We all need stress in our lives. It's actually a catalyst for change and action. And good stress exists, and we call that eustress. And eustress is something that makes you feel that you can handle it, that you're successful, and it energizes you. But a sort of a bad stress, which is really the one that we talk about when we talk about stress, is distress. And then it feels out of your control. You don't feel like you're handling it. It doesn't energize you. You sort of can have other feelings like depression and stuff because of it. And you feel uncomfortable in your life. But the way we handle ourselves really matters, because the stress that we have can come in three forms. It's physical stress, i.e. what's happening in our body; chemical stress, what we put in our body, or what we don't put in our body. So, that's about making good choices, like, are we escaping through drinks and drugs, or are we eating healthy food that nurtures our body? Those are the chemical pieces that we can play with. And of course, our environment is chemical too. So if we're in a smoky or toxic environment, that also would come under the chemical piece. But the third part is emotional. And that's really what underpins everything else, is that when we feel that we're under emotional stress, things shift in our physiology and also in our chemical ability to process things in our bodies. So, for example, if you have a problem at work and you come home and you eat comfort food and you have some drinks and you shut down, you don't talk to anyone, the chances are that you will trigger in your immune system symptoms, because it won't go to work, and the next day you're ill. That would be where you're sort of feeling very stressful. If you were to have the same event happen at work, but chose to just handle it differently, didn't put your body under chemical stress by having the drink and the comfort food, and you did talk to people, and you did do exercises and things that would actually make you feel more centered in you, you would probably be tackling your problem and stress more effectively, but also you would be not getting ill, because your immune system hasn't had that extra piece of stress in another area of yourself. Does that make sense, Karen?
It does. I absolutely can see how this eustress versus de-stress has played out in my own life. I think about how different my experience was putting myself through art school versus when I was putting myself through dental hygiene school. That some of these other external factors were the same, but like what you talk about, like how I reacted to this kind of stress is what made it different. That in dental hygiene school, I absolutely made myself ill in the way that I was dealing with it. It was a very competitive and difficult environment in a lot of ways. But then also it's like, why did I cope so much better when I was doing art school? Part of that is because art is my form of expression and decompression. And so that kind of had a built-in way for me to deal with it better. And so that also is the eustress, because you talk about it, what is the difference? What is energizing versus just draining?
Yeah.
Doing art under a deadline, that was actually energizing. Staying up all night, not eating well, like literally killing myself with these behaviors. I'm in dental hygiene school. I absolutely see the difference that you're talking about here, and a lot of it is the way that we're dealing with it. So why is this de-stress, why is it so unhealthy, so bad for us?
Well, the distress that we feel is basically a feedback. When you think about a woman, distressed, you see her sort of shouting and saying, "Help, help." Well, that's what your body's doing. Your body is basically distressed. And so you will have feedback symptoms from your body saying that you're overloading, you're out of balance. And you will have things like sleeplessness, tension. You know how you have tension in your shoulders?
Yes.
You don't realize till you actually try and drop your shoulders that how high they've been carried, because we carry a lot of stress in our bodies. So you might have sleeplessness, as I say, where you just can't sleep because you're thinking too much. Your brain is hooked on to your problem. You might be irritable as a result, which might cause problems in your relationships, which invariably have. And but you might also be suffering pain symptoms. You might have headaches. You might put on weight, and you might use escape techniques, which I like to call things like when you drink too much or you eat chocolate or comfort food, just because guess what? You're trying to give your body a balancing piece, because when you do those kind of things, you're causing a different chemical reaction in your body from the stress one. You're trying to give yourself some cortisol and dopamine to kind of calm you down. Dopamine to calm down the cortisol that's raging with your stresses.
Well, and I think that it's important that you bring this up. It's like there's a reason why, these behaviors and these symptoms exist, that it is this attempt to balance out the chemical thing that's going on in our bodies, that this stress hormone cortisol is important for our survival. I mean, back in the day, like, that's the chemical that showed up when you're being chased by a lion. Really important to get you out of danger. And I think where it's gotten tricky in our modern culture, that our modern stresses, that, the situations at work and school and with our relationships, our bodies are reacting in the same chemical way that if we were still being chased by a lion. And so to have this prolonged exposure to these stress chemicals, and we're trying to cope with them in various ways. And, this is where we see disease enter into the picture, and these unhealthy coping mechanisms that you're talking about. So what are some of these states that go hand in hand with stress as we're trying to rebalance ourselves?
Well, that's the crucial question, because obviously in our worlds, we have events and experiences that happen to us. And some of those events and experiences sit in our minds, in our memory, as something that's happened. Even if it's happened ages ago, it stays with us because we have certain states of belief about them. And so, for example, where you might be feeling distressed and feeling disempowered and not feeling centered in yourself will be where you have symptoms of shame and guilt, depression, fear and anxiety. Where you're using escaping and addictive behavior, there's definitely something underlying that will be running your story, running your life. And one of the things that I see commonly with my clients is when you have any of those pieces, you're going to have low self-worth and feeling of powerlessness in your life, because you're thinking that things have happened to you and that you didn't have any control over it. So if you've got any of those pieces playing, you're going to be potentially having stress in your body, in your mind, in the way you're thinking, the way you're responding to things that are happening to you now. So Kera and I thought this was a great way of taking each one of those 5 things and having a little chat, talking about the topics more in depth, and giving you some tools to help you if you'd like that.
Yes, I'm excited to really get into the nitty-gritty of some of these particular subjects that, we hear things about, like, anxiety and depression and shame, but like, what are the things that we can actually do to take that power back into ourselves and realize where we can make interventions for ourselves? And as you've coached me, this has been quite eye-opening for me to realize even some of the places where my greatest values, the things that matter the most to me in my life, have come from these places of voids and distress, and getting to reframe some of these things. And so I'm so excited to be doing this series with you. So yes, each week we're going to be coming out with a new episode to address some of these specific stress states and the tools that Tania actually uses with her clients. And we're going to make it available for you to ask questions on our Facebooks and comment in with the podcast itself, that if you have something coming up for you about any of these particular states of stress, we're going to take the top comment and we're going to answer that in our next episode. And then at the conclusion of this series, we're going to be doing a live webinar event where it will be a private event that you can join, but we'll be able to see each other's faces to really interact, that it will be a safe space that we are creating, that you can ask these questions, that we're here to hold space for each other so we can have these vulnerable conversations, but to actually progress beyond these points. So Tania, thank you so much for being part of my journey in this collaboration, already helping me find more of the perfection in my story. And I'm excited to move forward on the Ariadne Project with you for these particular subjects.
And so we're going to start with shame and guilt, I think, Kera, is that right?
Yes. Let's get right into the good stuff. That shame and guilt is one of these very universal experiences, and let's name that minotaur for what it is, and let's start taking down the bricks of the labyrinth.
I look forward to it. Thank you, Kera.
Tania, thank you so much. And this is the Ariadne Project, and we will be back next week addressing shame and guilt. In light and love, this is Kera Marie.